Yeah.
Why wouldn't the people in the Nile Valley at that time, 12,000 years ago, also not be Egyptian? Like, could they still be ethnically Egyptian at that time?
Well, I think in a way, I'm actually deeply uninterested in ethnic matters. When I come to relate to and evaluate a fellow human being or a culture, I'm interested in the ideas that those people have. I'm not interested in their genes. I think actually genes are vastly overrated. They're the least important aspect of a human being. They've been blown up into huge importance in our culture today, but I think skin color, genes, ethnicity, none of these things really matter. Human beings are the same all over the world. It's been my privilege to travel the world intensely for the best part of 40 years. And whether I go to the remotest village in the remotest corner of the Amazon, or whether I find myself in New York City, once I get down to talking face to face with a fellow human being, they're just a fellow human being, just like me. And they have the same hopes, the same dreams, the same fears as every other human being. So I think we make too many divisions. I love cultural differences. Yeah. Cultural differences are great. Differences in ideas are great, but genetic differences are trivial in my view. And the things that divide us as human beings are far less important than the things that unite us as human beings. I think maybe it's high time we recognize that. So whether the modern Egyptians are ethnically connected in any close way to the ancient Egyptians is a matter that I regard as fundamentally unimportant. The modern Egyptians also honor and respect the Great Pyramids and ancient Egyptian culture, and that's what matters to me.
I'm curious, picking back on that, like, how do you feel about the criticism that you got some people saying you're racist after the Netflix documentary?
Well, that criticism was
because that's why we brought you on. We're like, we hope you're racist. We like
you kind of let me down with this whole everyone's equal talk.
That was interesting. The subject of race is never mentioned in my Netflix series, Ancient Apocalypse. It's never mentioned at all. But when the Society for American Archaeologists wrote an open letter to Netflix demanding that my documentary series be reclassified as science fiction, they accused me of spreading racism, white supremacy, misogyny, and anti-Semitism. None of these issues are ever mentioned in the series.
Wait, what was misogynistic?
I don't know, and what, for that matter, was anti-Semitic. It's and what was racist, since race is never mentioned. But what these labels are very useful for, if you shout them loudly enough, if your friends in the media see a nice story here and pick them up and multiply it, what they're very useful for is turning people off the work of an opponent.
Yes,
and that was clearly what went on here.
If you're radioactive, I don't even have to debate you because you're radioactive.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's fundamentally what went on. Yeah. Now, what is the reason for what was the possible? They had no justification for any of the others, but what was the reason for saying that I was spreading racism and white supremacy? It's because in a number of my earlier books, I reported indigenous myths and traditions, particularly from South America and from Mexico, which in some cases referred to a white-skinned, bearded stranger and his companions who came after a time of darkness, after a great cataclysm, bringing knowledge and teaching knowledge to the inhabitants of the country. Now, that is not me saying that is indigenous traditions. The view of archaeologists today is that many of those traditions were simply made up by the Spanish conquistadors. I don't think that's true. There are many other archaeologists who don't agree with that and think that they are true and genuine indigenous traditions and should be rightly reported as such. Whether we're referring to Quetzalcoatl in Mexico or to Viracocha in the Andes, these traditions, it's a pan-American myth, and they're not only found in the Americas but all over the world. They don't always refer to a person as white skinned. You know, the emphasis that's put on skin color today is really recent in human history. It's a few hundred years old. Did the issue of white skin or black skin carry the same resonance 12,000 years ago that it carries today? I somehow doubt it. I doubt it very much. I don't see why it should, because the abuses of human rights that were carried out in the name of color are recent developments. They're not ancient developments, you know, and therefore
Recent in the scale of human history.
Recent in the scale of human history. Let's say the last 500 or 600 years, something like that. They weren't really there. They weren't really there before that. But it's a huge distraction from the major issue. They also refer to these individuals as being bearded. They often refer to there being 7 of them. In ancient Mesopotamia, they're called the 7 sages. In ancient Egypt, at the Temple of Horus at Edfu, they are also referred to as the 7 sages. In ancient India, it's Manu and the 7 sages who appear after the flood, trying to restore the knowledge that was lost during the time of the flood. These are indigenous traditions.
Same story, different parts of the world.
Same story, different parts of the world. That's one of the things that interests me about it. What interests me about it least of all is the issue of skin color. What interests me about it most of all is the issue that there seems to be a memory of a cataclysm after which a group of people tried to preserve knowledge from before the cataclysm.
Is this the Snow White myth?
I'm not sure.
She falls asleep. 7 dwarfs, or the 7 sages, they come wake her up with the wisdom of a guy should make out with you when you're passed out.
I need to reread the Snow White myth.
There might be something there. This is good.
Yeah. Well, no, because myths. Myths are the memory bank of our species.
This is what I loved about the Netflix special. Treating the myths as a way of passing on true information.
Yes.
And and taking them seriously, not looking at them as figments of imagination. If we were to pass on data and fact, it's way more digestible in the form of story. We memorize stories.
If you wish to pass information to a distant future, if you wish it to be preserved, you wouldn't be smart to just write it down. How can we know that our script is going to be readable by any other culture? Let's say 10,000 years in the future. Will anybody be able to read the English language? Who knows? I have no idea. It's fragile. An example I often give is the Indus Valley civilization in Pakistan and India. The Indus Valley civilization, nobody actually knew that it existed until it was accidentally discovered while a railway was being built through a site now called Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan. And then they found that there were these actually very, very sophisticated, very complex mud brick structures on a very large scale. Then they began to look at it. Then they found that this culture had a language, a fully developed written script. It's about 5,000 years old, but there isn't a single Rosetta Stone that enables us to translate that script into any more recent language. So we can't read that script. The script exists, but we can't read it. So there could be all kinds of information in that script, which tells all kinds of things about our past, but it's not readable.
And how long ago were they thriving?
5,000 years ago.
Wow.
One of the interesting things in the Indus Valley civilization is that there is a particular seal that has survived, a seal that would have been used to stamp an imprint onto cloth or something like that. It's called the Pasupati seal, and it shows a figure which is recognizable as the god Shiva, who's of course an important deity in Indian culture to this day and in the Vedas, and it shows that individuals seated in there you are. That's the Pasupati seal. Well, what you'll see is that underneath it, the way his feet are organized is that his heels are pointed forwards. This is a really difficult yoga position, to sit like that and have your heels pointed forward. You've got to kind of almost disjoint your legs in order to do that, okay? And the problem with that is that it's an advanced yoga position. It's found in a seal that's 5,000 years old. We have to ask ourselves, how many thousands of years before that was yoga being developed?
Holy shit.
You know, again, there's a hint of a lost human culture in this. The posture is called Mula Bandhasana. And I certainly can't do it.
Unbelievable. Because what do we date modern Indian civilization back to? Is it 5,000 years ago?
The Indus
4,000.
Yeah, since the discovery of the Indus Valley civilization, you know, we have to accept that civilization in India is at least 5,000 years old. The largely and correctly discredited notion of an Aryan invasion of India needs to be abandoned as well. Yes, there were multiple cultures moving back and forwards, but Indian culture is extremely, extremely ancient.
5,000 years.
Yeah. And
Indus Valley, that's like a thing you'll learn about in textbooks.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you learn about it
It's like
now.
accepted, yeah.
But what most people don't realize was nobody knew it even existed. It was a lost
And
civilization.
the language is completely independent. There's no connectivity to anything
Nobody
else.
can connect it to anything. We don't know what it was. There's some suggestion that it may have been Dravidian peoples, the peoples who are now found in primarily in southern India, people, the Tamils. As a matter of fact, my wife is Tamil.
Gotcha.
And that's been very helpful to us when we've been researching in southern India. We did a lot of diving in southern. My wife is a photographer and a diver, as I am, and we did a lot of diving in southern India. So it was great to be able to talk, for her to be able to talk in their own language to Tamil fishermen and Tamil divers, and see if they'd seen any weird stuff underwater, which they certainly had, and they took us to diving on structures that are a fully formed city off the town of Mahabalipuram.
Now,